What is up, everyone? I think there should be, yeah. Let me just turn this down a little bit. In my mind, it was a lot more hype to have the Madden theme song going down when I turn this on, but it's just it's not as good as I thought. All right, for everyone that is here, I'm sure people are still going to figure this out because there's always issues with synchronous online. Welcome to the live paper editing live stream. Before you think I'm a crazy person and designed all of this just for the class, just know that I'm a musician around Georgia, and when COVID started shutting down venues and stuff, really the only way to play a lot of shows was online. So I started learning how to use Streams Live OBS. If any of you are familiar with that, you know what's up. But most of the stuff that I've created here has already been learned or used for my music. So welcome, though, 1101 students, to this experience. I'm sure you've not had any professor do anything like this. So let's walk through a couple of things really quick. First of all, okay, some housekeeping things, some housekeeping notes. The first thing is I'm going to be catching up on all of your grades sometime before Thursday, if not on Thursday. As I say, pretty much every class I'm in the middle of doing a thesis, and grading kind of takes the back seat most of the times when it comes to order of operations or what I'm going to do with my life. But Thursday, we are not having class. Y'all's paper is due on Thursday, but I'm going to be using that day to catch up with grading. So know that your paper is going to be due by 5 p.m. on Thursday, not midnight, so don't get it mixed up. It actually closes on D2L. And if you don't see your grades updated by Friday, then you can start freaking out. Second thing, sign up for conferences. Sign up for conferences. All right, hold up. Let me just show you. Whoa. What is this? Hold up. Here we go. So some of y'all may have seen this already, but I'm going to go ahead and explain it. I posted this D2L announcement right here. It says link to conference sign up. This is what it looks like. It is everything that you need to know is in this directions panel, but I'm going to briefly explain it for all of those that may not completely understand what's going on. Next week, following your first paper being due, we are not going to have normally scheduled classes. No meeting on Microsoft Teams, no Zoom, nothing like that. What's going to happen is I'm going to be meeting with each of you individually, and your paper grade for your first paper is contingent upon you doing this. So I've had to give zeros in the past for the first paper for people just absolutely refusing to do conferences. I don't know why. But here's a couple of things I'll tell you. One, there's a bunch of time slots here. Pick whichever one works for you, and we're going to meet on that day. I'll post next week how exactly we'll be meeting, but don't worry about that right now. Number two, if there's a time slot that was taken, or if there's something that doesn't work for you, because I know these are 15-minute time slots, and it might go beyond our normally scheduled class. I have a more flexible schedule than you. I almost guarantee that. So if something on here doesn't work, or if you need a specific time, please reach out to me. Don't ignore it. Don't just say, oh, I'm not going to attend conference, because you absolutely need to. So make sure you find a spot, or make sure you email me so we can figure out what's going on. All right, so last thing. Okay, yeah, no more housekeeping rules. Last thing, I'm going to have to lay down some live stream rules with the Z. These are just to protect me. Honestly, I don't really care. First thing is this, even though this is being broadcasted to YouTube, I wouldn't put anything in the comments that you wouldn't want KSU ever knowing. That doesn't mean you can't, press F in the comments or whatever, but don't put anything incriminating. This is still connected to KSU. I just need to throw that out there. Second thing is I can actually see the chat box. It's up on the screen. You can see it on your screen, I'm sure. There's about a 7-second delay from me talking in real time to y'all actually seeing what I'm saying. But whenever someone drops a comment, like I see Brandon dropped a comment asking what style of music, it's like acoustic folk music. But whenever I start going through these papers, if there's comments here about something specific on the paper, I'm going to be able to see it. So be sure to ask questions whenever you want. Other than that, I'm going to get everything set up. Just a reminder in case you forgot, because Tuesday felt, like 2 years ago. Or wait, what is today? Today is Tuesday. Last Thursday felt like 2 years ago. This is a live stream paper edit of a couple of brave, selfless students that volunteered to finish their paper a little bit early in rough draft form and submit it so I can grade these in real time in front of y'all. All of their information is anonymized, so no one's going to know who's who. So don't be afraid to ask questions in the chat. But this is to help you understand how I'm going to be grading, what I'm going to be looking for, and so on and so forth. I'm going to do one of these for every single paper. So just know that if you like what you see and you want your paper to be next, it's totally a possibility. All right, so I'm going to put on this transition while I get the technology side of things set up. Oops, nope, don't want that. Let's see. Oh, I see what I'm doing. Okay, sorry, it's already 5 p.m. I'm going to put on this transition. It took me a little bit to make, so I hope you guys appreciate it. And I'm going to get it set up for our first paper. If there's any questions while this is happening, drop them in the chat, and I'll try to answer them. Going. I just want to say too, if your paper is, obviously like I told you in the email that I sent you, if your paper is the one that is being used for this activity, wow, I really messed this up. If your paper is the one that's being used for this activity, try not to reveal yourself. Try to keep it quiet. Also know that I'm grading these knowing that these are a rough draft. So if I'm a little harsh, it's for educational purposes and not because it's 5 p.m. and I'm hungry. Do you like liquid mode? I'm gonna refrain from answering that because I don't want KSU to know if I like liquid mode. Okay, so I got this pulled up. We're gonna go through a couple of things really quick. Actually, first, before I do that, even though this is slightly illegal, it doesn't matter because this is an educational stream and you get to bend the rules a little bit. I'm going to put on some lo-fi chill hot beats to relax /study to 24/7. If you know, you know, but it's to help me and also to kind of add something to the dead silence. And we're only going to have time probably to review 2 papers. I know I took 4 volunteer submissions, but I'm doing that on purpose because I want to be able to kind of get in depth with some of these papers. So let me listen to this guy. Okay. Sure. It's very tranquil. Okay. All right, so this is the first paper we're going to be looking at today. This is from Student 2. Everyone congratulate Student 2 for their brave contribution to our group learning here. First thing I do when I grade a paper is I go down to the bottom and I attach the rubric to the bottom of the paper. So all of your papers are going to have this rubric on the bottom. That's one, so I don't have to keep going between multiple browser tabs to, do stuff. But also, when I give the paper back, it's so you'll know what's up. You can just scroll to the bottom of your paper and see what you got. First thing I always grade is MLA style, especially on this first paper because it's easy to see. There's no citing sources or anything like that. So let's take a look at the MLA style on this paper. All right, so, outside of anonymizing the name, you can see that they've got it pretty set. The only thing I think that might be a minor issue is the date. Like I said, always kind of put the date that you are submitting something, especially in your early college careers, because professors really like to knock that up. So it looks like the identifying information is in the correct order. We got headers up here, which are good. The title, let me set the record straight. Like I told y'all, I don't really grade on title because I'm pretty bad at giving titles to things myself. So whatever you want to put in the title box, that's fine. I'm not going to hold it against you, but there needs to be something there. And in this case, it just says set the record straight, which is good. As you can see, no spaces between paragraphs, perfect. Every paragraph is indented. And then the memo is on its own standalone page and is approximately, I think I said 400 words, approximately 400 words. So good. Everything on that front is good. I'm going to go ahead and mark them for an A for MLA style. Good job, Student 2. All right, I'm going to read the first paragraph, and we'll kind of talk it down. But I'm going to be breaking it down paragraph by paragraph. Let me turn this down just a little bit so I can concentrate. There we go. All right, so set the record straight. Given the current rumors circling within my fan base, I feel I must clear up the incident regarding the student I gave quote-unquote permanent hearing loss with my trumpet during my freshman year of high school. As you may have heard, an anonymous student is currently seeking psychological and financial aid for the trauma and damage they received during the pep rally. For the people that watch my stream, you know that I am against those who try to act like a victim when they have something to gain. Their testament against me does not hold up compared to other witness accounts, including mine. Okay, good. I'm going to correct this right here. Testimony, not testament. There is a distinct difference between the two, but I'm not going to spend the time to research it. So this is what I want y'all to know, and I want to let y'all know, gosh, I lost my train of thought there. What I want y'all to know about the opening paragraph of your paper is that, and we'll get into this with other papers, I've been intentionally kind of vague about how I want your papers organized and grammar and kind of the sentence level details, because the whole point of this first paper is to kind of see where you're at as a writer. It's not for me to tell you how to write. The very first paragraph of a paper is probably the most important paragraph because it sets up this concept called exigence. Now, I'm going to really get into this whenever we get into the second paper, and especially the third paper. But exigence is a fancy way of saying who gives a shit. And that's literally what it means. When I say what's the exigence of something, what I'm really saying is why should I give a shit about this thing? So whenever I say something needs to set up exigence, or there needs to be exigence, there needs to be this clear sense of why am I reading this? Why should I read this, right? There needs to be some sense of importance to this. And I think the writer actually does set up exigence really well. The first sentence: given my current rumor circling within my fan base, I feel I must clear up the incident regarding the student I gave quote unquote permanent hearing loss with my trumpet during freshman year of high school. Good. As you may have heard, an anonymous student is currently seeking psychological and financial aid for the trauma and damage they received during the pep rally. So before we go any further, I know that the exigence, why should I give a shit, is that this student, or the author of this rhetorical situation, gave permanent hearing damage, whether it was intentional or accidental, to another person. And so I'm immediately invested in this story because there's high stakes, right? Also, look at my Bob Ross mug. It's pretty cool. All right. So I feel like there is a clear sense of exigence in this paper. I know why I'm reading it. The stakes are high. Let's look at the last paragraph. Or I'm sorry, the last sentence. Their testimony against me does not hold up compared to other witness accounts, including mine. So the other part of this is setting up that even though there's allegations out there, they're not true, right? So there's these crazy, it's two-parter. It's a two-parter to this exigence being created. One, someone got permanent hearing loss involving a trumpet, and I'm excited to figure out what that's all about. And two, it's not the author's fault. So first paragraph immediately sets it up, right? Another way you can think about paragraphs, and again, I will definitely get into this as we go into the other papers, is think about paragraphs as being episodes of a season of a TV show. So if you were going to watch a TV show on Netflix right now, or you might be watching one right now, who knows? If that first episode doesn't get you into the series, if the pilot episode doesn't draw you in, what are the chances of you watching more? Probably zero, right? Like the first paragraph, just like the first episode of a series, needs to be the most crucial in setting the stakes for the rest of the paper. And I think it does it. Second paragraph. To begin, here's what the student testifies as to what happened. Ooh, missing the article there. I had awoken that morning excited because that day was going to be my first pep rally. So I went throughout the school day getting excited at the thought of the cheering crowds and fun games. By the time they announced the pep rally would be held in the gym, I decided to sit by the band, which seemed like an all right spot at the time. Minutes before the show started, the loudest noise I've ever heard boomed like an explosion right beside me, throwing my mind into a state of panic and leaving my ears ringing. I looked over to the source of the noise, and his face was burnt into my mind. He was smiling and looking around as if to mock everyone around him. It pains me that he is now a successful Twitch streamer, and no one has seen through his good guy facade for what he truly is, a monster with no empathy for others. Okay. A couple of things with this. I'm gonna first give you my first message here, the Tobey Maguire error message. It's my signature move on these live streams. This is good. This is good to set up the paper, showing some anecdotal story about the accusations that your fictional self is going to be talking about, right? But I feel like it could be done a lot quicker, especially since I know this paper is already at the over the mark of 2.5 pages. You're going to want to, early on in the paper, kind of keep the reader, aka me, interested in what's going on. I like some of this stuff, but I feel like a lot of it is unnecessary. So first pep rally is good. I went throughout the school day getting excited, hearing the cheering crowds and fun games. Sure. By the time they announced the rally, I'll be in the gym. I don't know what that sentence is, but okay. I feel like these two sentences should be connected. I decided to sit by the band, which seemed like an all right spot at the time. Minutes before the show started, the loudest noise I'd ever heard boomed like an explosion right beside me, throwing my mind into a state of panic and leaving my ears ringing. So all of this is funny, but it's like kind of talking about the same thing in a redundant fashion. So I would say condense that a little bit. I looked over to the source of the noise, and his face was burnt into my mind. He was smiling and looking as if to mock everyone around him. Again, unless this is going to be brought back later, I would condense it a little. It pains me that he's a now success. I like that line because it lines up with what you were saying up here. You're against those who try to act like a victim when they have something to gain. So that makes sense. I think this should probably be 2 to 3 or maybe 1 to 2 sentences shorter and make it a little bit punchier. All right, let's look at, I do like it though. It's a good sentence. I don't want to completely, in fact, I'm going to get out of this error message. I don't want you to feel as if it's wrong, right? But it is a little wordy and it does kind of drag on a little bit. All right, so paragraph 3. As you can all see, they seem to believe that I was thrilled about the whole experience when in truth it was quite embarrassing for me. I feel as though I should give the third party's view of the situation just to put everything into perspective before I give my side of the story. For this reason, I recently called an old classmate and asked him to give his account of what happened. Good. That corroborates what you said in the first paragraph. According to him, that pep rally was about the same as all the other pep rallies. Pretty boring and uneventful. Yeah, that's every pep rally in high school. I sat on the side opposite of the band because I got in there early and it was filling up. While we were getting situated, there was the sound. Yeah. And I'm not really holding these writers accountable for typos because I feel like it's still in rough draft form. But you're going to want to double check your paper for misspellings. The best way to do that is to get someone else to read it, because if you're reading your own writing, it's really hard to notice stuff like that. There was the sound of someone in the band playing a note. The sound was loud enough to draw everyone's attention from their conversations to the kid who was holding their trumpet up. Blank lowered his trumpet and smiled awkwardly at everyone while slowly sinking into his chair. About 5 seconds or so went by before everyone went back to their conversations. Then about 10 minutes later, the pep rally started. I'm going to say the same thing I said with the other one. I feel like this is good because it's giving like this witness testimony, but it feels like it's dragging on. It feels like it's a little longer than it should be because we're already 3 paragraphs in, and really the only time I've heard the author is in this opening paragraph, and that wasn't really, they were setting up the paper at this point. So I would say to the writer, consider rearrangement. Consider like putting the author's voice in a little earlier, or maybe in between these paragraphs or something, so it doesn't feel like we're just reading witness testimony after witness testimony. Okay, so paragraph 4. Yeah. Paragraph 4. As perfectly explained by my colleagues, yes, I did play a somewhat loud note during a pep rally, but not on purpose. Good. I feel I must say I do not advocate purposely interrupting large groups of people. They also explained how I really reacted while in the student's testimony, possessive apostrophe, while in the student's testament. Yeah, there it is again. Testimony. They said I was smiling and looking around as if to mock everyone around me. I believe I should give my side of the story now that everything has been put into perspective. Okay. So this is whenever we get into the author's side of the story, right around here. And I don't know why this is in quotations, because the author would presumably be writing this. So I think we should delete these quotations. The pep rally was on Monday, September 18th, 2017 to be exact. The day started off like any other. I woke up, got dressed, and went to school. That day, everyone in the band were to meet up in the band room. I'm going to say delete that. Was everyone in the band? I know what's happening here. It's missing an action verb. Was required or were required. Okay. To meet up in the band room instead of going to their first class. This, however, was not the case for a few members who completely forgot about the pep rally that day. While we waited for the teachers to send them to the band room, a few other trumpets and I decided to clear out our instruments with the extra time. The missing students took too long to show up to the room, so the band director decided to just go straight to the gym. This, however, left us with no time to practice our parts. Since I was the newest trumpet in the section, I was placed in the chair, which means I was closest to where the other freshmen would be sitting. As the other students were filling up their seats, the trumpet section I was a part of decided we should practice our parts quietly so we would not mess up during the rally. I attempted to play my first note in the piece, but was met with resistance. This frightened me because I was not sure of what could be wrong with my instrument. I kept pushing air into my trumpet while messing with the valves. I heard one of the other older trumpets that sometimes a valve... Okay, that makes sense. I heard from one of the older trumpets that sometimes a valve would get twisted and block the air flow after it was cleaned. All of a sudden, one of the valves twisted into position, which released all the pressure that was built up. A note was released from my trumpet. While not deafening, it was loud enough to draw everyone's attention. I was so embarrassed, all I could do was smile awkwardly, including my section, who were looking at me understanding eyes. I felt like I should shrink into my seat so everyone would lose sight of me and hopefully forget. The pep rally started a few minutes after I had calmed down, and it went off without another incident. Okay, so I think these last two sentences should just be cut because they've already been talked about. And everything before that is corroborates your story as a trumpet, yeah. Okay, so let me read this last paragraph, and I'm going to kind of give my general thoughts before we read the memo. In truth, I know that the note I played that day was surprising and probably interrupted a few conversations. I also know that it was not loud enough to cause permanent damage because of a hearing test I took a few days ago. To restate what I said earlier, I 100% do not advocate harmfully interrupting groups for entertainment, nor do I believe that people should act like a victim when they are in the wrong and have something to gain. I'm going to leave it at that for now, as this video has already gotten quite long, but if you have any questions for me, please leave them in the comments section down below. Thank you for listening to my story. Okay, so I'm just now realizing that this is like a monologue from a video, and it wasn't abundantly clear to me at the beginning. So I'm going to get back to that in just a second. A couple of general thoughts just off the cuff, One, if this is a famous streamer, it's not really, there's nothing that indicates that they are a streamer until maybe the end and a little bit in the beginning. A lot of this is just corroborating stories, which is good, I guess, but I kind of want there to be more sense of this person being famous throughout it, right? It's kind of like just the recounting of events that led to this person getting mad. The second thing, I feel like there's no, the person that would be complaining about this, the person that got their head exploded by your trumpet, they're not really painted in a good light. And I know that's intentional, but also, even if this was an accident, I think they're a little justified to be upset if they had permanent hearing damage. I don't know. That's just me. So unless there's more personality put into the streamer, like I'm imagining like what's his name? I don't know how I'm forgetting his name. Like the world's biggest streamer, PewDiePie. Like the way that he addresses controversy. The way that he addresses controversy is to kind of just say, yeah, I did that, and here's why. This one isn't really saying, yeah, I did that, and here's why. It's more saying, yeah, I did that, and here's why the other person is wrong, or here's why they're making a big deal out of it, or here's why they're just trying to use me because I'm famous. I don't know. It just feels like it's like almost apologetic in tone, but it's never really getting there. So let's check out the memo, because those are just some raw off the cuff thoughts. We'll see what the writer has to say in the memo. This story would be released as a video on my channel, either being Twitch or my YouTube. So yes, a monologue of a video. Good. The author would be myself, a famous Twitch live streamer of sorts. Good. My audience will be mostly my viewers and fans, but could also include the anonymous student. Yeah, I imagine they would be watching it. I used the initial testament to purposely paint myself in a bad light while using the retelling to look as if the initial testament was wrong by saying things like, they seem to believe, as perfectly explained by my colleague, and in truth. In the in paragraph, I further state that I took a hearing test to add to the fact that the note I played did not cause hearing damage. But to be fair, why would it cause hearing damage for you if you're blowing out of the trumpet, you know? I then repeatedly tell my audience that I do not advocate interrupting others, and I don't believe people who play the victim when they are both in the wrong and have something to gain. So that is very consistent throughout, I will say. This is to show that I have some common sense and I'm not just denying causing damage to someone, which would also be my message. So yeah, I mean, I do feel like you don't deny it, but you don't necessarily, outside of your initial testament of saying, you know, here's why I blew the trumpet super hard, there's never this like, I feel sorry for it, or I feel bad, or like I could see why this person might think that it was intentional, but it wasn't. I was doing this, right? So for me, there's some mixed messaging in the actual explanation or breakdown. And also the number one thing for me is I don't get a consistent picture that this person is a famous streamer. And what would indicate that? Well, in the memo, if you talked about, here's some genre conventions that I used. I talked about, so if you want to use a Twitch streamer, use some streamer language, right? Maybe words like PogChamp or F in the chat or Streams OBS or whatever the other things are. Throw in some language that would show me that this person spends a lot of time streaming video games to the internet, right? To me, it just seems like the first paragraph is, hey, I'm a Twitch streamer, and the rest is just kind of a normal person. So I want the blend kind of in there. I also think that even though the author kind of does allude to specific phrases that justify why they organized it in a certain way or why they're in the right in this situation, it's not really talking about the genre conventions that are used, and that is a huge portion of this. Why did you use "they seem to believe"? Is that because it created an informal tone? Is that because you were trying to seem like defensive? Try to be more specific in why the genre conventions that you decided to use were used, or add some genre conventions in and then explain why you want to use those. All right, so before we get into the next part of it, I'm going to ask y'all what you think in the chat.
Keep your secrets.
God, I love that. I love that animation. What do we think for a grade? If you were me, and this was the final draft that was submitted, what do you think? Where do you think it's landing on the F to A scale? And while y'all put that in the chat, I'm gonna actually be tallying it up. Okay. Thank you. So yeah, I'm seeing a lot of like low B, high C. That is that's where I landed. And Sam, I'm going to answer that exactly. Uh this is where the breakdown kind of happened. Development, cohesion, and claims. I think that the paper is very logical and constructed in a very intentional way, right? It's like, hey, here's these people making accusations against me. Here's a couple of testimonies, and here's what I have to say, and that's it. Where I kind of took off points is, to me, kind of the fluffiness of it. Like in some of the testimony, it seemed redundant at times. The actual sentences being used or the story being told seemed like it was kind of just meandering or saying the same thing but in different ways. As far as organization goes, I really wish that the author would kind of, instead of having it just quotes from people that are sandwiched by an opening and closing paragraph, would kind of insert himself as an authority in between these things. So instead of an entire paragraph that's like, here's what they said, quote, entire paragraph, stop in the middle of that and be like, here's what I think about it. Because again, this is a Twitch stream or a YouTube stream. So you would be, imagine YouTube React videos. Do they sit and watch the entire video before they react? No, they stop in the middle of it and they kind of insert themselves. And I think that the author needs to do that more in this situation. I took off the most points for genre conventions, and yes, I'm going to get into that right now. So, genre conventions. When we talk about genre conventions, obviously the rhetorical situation, this needs to be burned into your skull because you need this for everything in the class. Author, audience, message, and context. I almost forgot it there. So these three things, the author, audience, and message, meet each other in the context. The context is what determines the genre conventions. And the genre conventions are the rules that are put on the language itself. So things like diction, what words are used? Tone, is it formal or is it informal? Syntax, is it big sentences or little sentences? Arrangement, so like paragraph arrangement. Oops. So think about the context of this. This is an apology letter from a famous Twitch streamer, or I guess a Twitch streamer, a gamer. And it's like a monologue on their stream, right? So like I was saying earlier, some of the genre conventions could literally just be diction, which is just word choice. So someone that's a famous Twitch streamer is going to be talking in the way that Twitch streamers would be talking. They're going to use these words that people in their audience would understand. I'm not, even though I'm live streaming to you right now, I don't watch Twitch live streams, but I imagine, words like PogChamp, things like that. There needs to be an indication to me more that the person writing this is a Twitch streamer, or they're Twitch streaming games. The tone is very informal, so I don't think there's an issue with tone. Syntax, to me, it's kind of, the sentences are kind of long and meandering, but I feel like that's because it's a YouTube monologue or a Twitch monologue. So for the author, if you keep the sentences the same way, all you have to do in this memo is say, well, the sentences are really long because this is me, like it would be me talking on my channel, right? And this is supposed to emulate people talking. And when you talk, just like I'm doing right now, the sentences kind of drag on longer and longer. So this is what I mean by genre conventions. It's, you want to clearly define why you're doing the things you're doing, and not just talking about why you're doing the things you're doing in relation to the story you're telling, but in relation to the actual rhetorical situation. So I chose the phrase "they seem to believe" because as a Twitch streamer, I feel as though I'm going to not take blame for this because it wasn't my fault, and I want my fans to not know, or to know that it's not my fault. So I reinforce that it's not my fault by saying these things over and over again. I do not believe people who play the victim. Yeah, it just seems like it's more or less like you're corroborating the story and not necessarily talking about the genre conventions that you created. I hope that makes sense to you, Sam. But if we were going to give this person a grade right now, so grammar, there were a lot of consistent grammar and spelling issues. Like I said, I only mark off for unique mistakes. So, you know, I took off a couple points here and there for commas, misspellings, and like clause-related issues. But the MLA style was perfect. Also keep in mind that this is a volunteer paper, so they would have plus 5 points. So this would actually be an 86. So not much work is needed really to get this up to an A for the author, but they're taking some of the considerations that I gave you, especially when it comes to the memo and specifying like why you're choosing specific words, why you're striking a specific tone, and what that means for the context, right? This is a monologue, right, on a Twitch stream. Cool. All right, so I'm going to transition to the next paper, which is a little bit longer than this one. So prep yourself for that. I did read all of these papers beforehand just in case there was any surprises. But thank you so much to the author that submitted this. You know, F in the chat, I guess, if you liked it. I liked it. I thought it was good. We're going to move on. This will be the last one we do because we got about 30 minutes left. This is from Student 3. Thank you, Student 3. Your brave contribution to our class will not be forgotten. You will live in the annals of history of this class. So, like I said, first thing I do is I always check MLA. Just looking at this, glancing at it, it's perfect. The date's good. The identifying information is good. There's a header, which is good. 1/2-inch tabs to start every single paragraph. No unnecessary spaces. Be sure it can't be any person with a platform, and they'd have to make an apology. Oh. I don't know. No. Sorry, I'm just now seeing your messages, Justin. Is a streamer the only choice we have? Yeah. No, it's not the only choice you have. It's I'm saying yeah to Katrina Clark because what you're doing is creating a fictional persona of someone that would have a large audience, and she's answering it right now. Yeah, like an actor, an influencer, someone that's going to have a lot of people that would want to have something hiding or not want to have something hiding. I'm sorry, y'all. I need to get something to eat. I'm losing calories in real time. Okay, so let's take a look at this paper. MLA is like damn near perfect. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. So I'm going to go ahead and give it 10 out of 10. Good job there. All right, so first paragraph. I'm writing this not for the haters or the liars. I'm writing this for the fans. I've been the victim of blackmail for some time now. Separate these. And before certain behind-the-scenes allegations come to light, I need to come clean and be honest with everyone. I framed a former coworker, Lindsay, and aided her in being fired and charged with a misdemeanor. I know your disappointment in me is insurmountable, but the situation is so much more convoluted than any of you can imagine, and I must speak my truth. When I began my platform, I had no idea what amassed to this. You guys are my family, and I love you all, and I hope you see my, I think that's supposed to be sincerity, but we'll overlook that, Student 3. I get it. You didn't mean to do that. All right, so I'm going to give this some praise. We were talking about the worship from SpongeBob. We were talking about exigence, which is a word that you don't need to necessarily understand right now because it'll make more sense in the other papers. But reading this first paragraph, I totally understand why I should give a shit as the reader, right? I know exactly why I should continue reading. This is obviously a famous person. It's clear in the first opening sentence. I'm writing this for the fans, right? So I know that this is a person with a platform, and as a reader, that keeps me somewhat interested. Then second sentence, I am a victim of blackmail, right? Immediately jumping into it. So this exigence is set up fairly quickly, but there's also a little bit of personality set up and kind of the structure of what I imagine the story is going to be set up too, right? I framed a former coworker. I know people are disappointed in me. And when I became famous, I had no idea that I would be this famous or this story would leak, right? The only issues that I have with this, and this is to the writer, and it's a very small thing, it wouldn't lose you a lot of points, is you want to, all of y'all, if you're going to use semicolons, be selective with them. These semicolons are not technically correct. Well, the first one isn't. There's a difference between an independent and dependent clause, and you can only use semicolons to separate independent clauses. When I say independent clause, it literally just means a sentence that can stand by itself. So if you were to walk into a classroom and see this written on the board, I am writing this not for the haters or the liars, it seems like it's connected to a larger thing, right? That makes it a dependent clause. I'm writing this for the fans is independent, stands on its own. When you connect two sentences together with a semicolon, they have to be independent clauses. So just keep that in mind. I would say, if you're ever wondering, should I use a semicolon or not, I would just say don't use one because one, they don't look good, and two, they're for very, very specific things. So like this last sentence, you can see how these two sentences would stand on their own. When I began my platform, I had no idea what amassed to this. Independent clause. You guys are my family and I love you all, and I hope you see my sincerity. Independent clause. So this one is technically correct, but I don't like to see a lot of semicolons because they're just very easy to mark wrong, especially if they are wrong. So use them carefully is what I will say. All right, so second paragraph. And by the way, great job. This is a solid opener. Like I was using my episodes of a season analogy earlier. If this were the opening episode of like a 10 episode series on Netflix, I would keep watching. Okay. As you all know, when I began my platform, I was working. The only thing I don't know right off the bat before I continue reading is what they mean by platform. So the context of their fame is not immediately clear to me, but I kind of like the mystery of it right now. As you all know, when I began my platform, I was working at a small perfume store in my local mall. I was 17. I was 17 when I started working there, and I just loved it. I mean, I was a shark on the sales floor. I would rack up $300, $400, $500, even $1,000 sales. Yeah, you don't need the hundreds there. 3, 4, 5, even $1,000 sales. I thrived working with and around people. Actually, for 3 years in a row, I was top 5 in my entire district with sales. In my time there, I worked my way up from a simple sales associate to the assistant manager. However, it was not all smooth sailing. I went through training with another coworker who I mentioned prior, Lindsay. To put it bluntly, so you would want to move this. And I'm not trying to harp on this writer for grammar mistakes, but that one is a subject clause. So it's complimenting coworker. Through the training with another coworker, Lindsay, who I mentioned prior. To put it bluntly, she was a bitch. She was 3 years older than me, and she had been hired 2 weeks earlier as a key holder. She knew both her age and her position had power over me, and she took advantage of that. We worked a lot of shifts together, and I have to admit, she was a brilliant saleswoman. She and I were neck and neck when it came to sales, always striving to be better than the other. To this day, I believe that while we hated each other, we brought out the best in each other. While we both had a mutual dislike for each other, she did little to hide her feelings, and for a long time she would mock me, ignore me, and even steal my customers. Eventually, our built-up bitterness and resentment for each other finally culminated in a blowout that left me in shambles. On that floor, next to a dirty toilet scrubber and sobbing into an industrial-sized pack of toilet paper, I promised myself I would never let someone treat me like that again. Okay, so I'm gonna draw a line in the metaphorical sand here. This is an amazing paragraph from a narrative perspective. What's going on here is really just one thing. The writer is setting up this Lindsay character, which was already introduced in the opening paragraph, right? So we knew Lindsay was going to be a part of the story. But what I appreciate about this is like it's framed in a way that kind of shows Lindsay's and the author's progression together and why they hate each other, and it kind of contextualizes everything. I'm gonna give another SpongeBob for this one. It is a bit of a long paragraph, but I think that this one works. I think it works, even though it's kind of long. All right, so let's look at the third paragraph and see if we can keep this momentum going. Because as you could see when I was reading it, even out loud, it flowed very well. It felt like a story, right? There's a lot of personality in this. And there wasn't a point where I was kind of stopping or fumbling over my words, because it just felt like we're building up this this conflict that probably has something to do with the author's blackmail situation. A month later, I was promoted to a key holder, putting Lindsay and I on the same professional level. With a newfound self-respect and freshly inflated ego, our harmless joke snowballed into something unimaginable. Okay, I'm going to come back to that. Lindsay and I always spoke ill of each other. We were practically famous for hating each other. Everyone kind of ignored it, except for my best work friend, Jasmine. Jazz had her own issues with Lindsay, so when we talked about her, it was a catharsis like no other. I deeply regret so much of what we had said. About her. It was some of the meanest stuff I'd probably said in my life. It was another one of those days when we came up with our plan. It started out as a joke that was just hurtful, but just as harmless as every other jab we'd ever made at Lindsay. I'm kind of feeling bad for this Lindsay character right now. I don't know if y'all feel that way. I'm not sure if it was the 5-hour energy infused espresso, or if it was the fact that we were simply over our edge, but we came up with a plan to get Lindsay fired, and not just any plan, but a 3-dimensional, multifaceted plan. I really do appreciate, though, this is actually a paper that, you can take some risk on. This isn't an academic paper, this is a story. So I really, really like that the writer is kind of playing with language and also not scared to kind of just like insert themselves into it, and not just a plan, but a 3-dimensional, multifaceted plan, right? It doesn't feel like the apology letters that I was showing y'all, but it feels like its own unique thing, and I really appreciate that. Hold on, let me get out of SpongeBob. What I will say about this is I'm starting to feel as though there's a lot of details that are inserted into this that I'm having to remember, right? So we don't yet know exactly what the author is getting blackmailed for, right? But we do know a lot of information about the work that she used to do, her co-workers, and kind of like what their shifts were like. So I would say to the writer and for people taking notes, like, as a reader, and y'all are listening to this too, but imagine being the person reading this with fresh eyes. You're kind of wondering, okay, when are we going to get to this thing, right? When are we going to get to this like big reveal of what they did? And it's going to come in the next paragraph. But again, like, this paragraph comes after a very, very well set up paragraph, one that really, really inserts exposition into this very well. But this one seems like there's some details about Jasmine that I don't really necessarily care about, unless they're going to come into play later, and we'll see. To To understand how Jazz and I pulled this off, I should tell you our store had drop ceilings you could push in the tiles. For the next couple months, we'd sneak things into the ceilings where cameras... Wait, did I miss one? No, I didn't. Where cameras had a blind spot, so we would never actually have to take anything off store property. When our plan did actually come to fruition, it was actually there. I wasn't actually there, so my account is hearsay. Jasmine told me she planted a $300 bottle of cologne in Lindsay's bag, and that night, during one of our routine bag checks, our manager, quote-unquote, found the bottle and the culprit who had been stealing from the store for the past couple of months. Our company's zero-tolerance policy led to her prompt dismissal and a police report. The company did end up taking her to court. I'm not sure about the exact details of the case, but Lindsay was sentenced to 30 days in jail and had to pay a pretty hefty fine. Jeez. Oh, no. I really didn't bother with following up on her after she was fired, but when the blackmailers contacted me, I was informed she had recently been kicked out of her apartment and was forced to move back in with her parents in Florida. That's where all the crazy shit goes down, in Florida. It really was unbelievable how easily the entire plan came together. I'm kind of confused. I'm going to get back to this in just a second. Everyone refused to even consider Lindsay's innocence, so Jasmine and I promised each other we'd go to the grave with this secret. I feel bad because she doesn't deserve to have our secret exposed due to my fame. Jazz, I'm so sorry. This is how it's coming out. Okay, good. So that's why Jasmine's important, because she's implicated in this crime. So that makes sense to me now. I don't know about y'all, but I'm not exactly sure, like, outside of, you know, them putting the bottle in Lindsay's purse, why this was like a 3-month-long operation. What were they putting up in the ceiling? Things that they were going to steal? Okay, but it seems like they just kind of put this bottle of cologne in Lindsay's bag. This wasn't like a huge build-up. It was just a spontaneous thing. So I'm a little unclear on that end. So maybe that could be kind of clarified a little bit in a rewrite. All right, hold on. Let me see how much I got left. Okay, couple paragraphs. So now we know what's going on. We're 2.5 pages in and we know what's happening, right? But a lot of this was kind of storytelling. So it was fun to read. There's a lot of exposition. Like I said, sometimes some unnecessary details, but a lot of this is building up the character. And even though I don't exactly know why the character is famous yet, like I kind of pointed out in the opening paragraph, I don't necessarily know why this person is famous. I'm hoping that I'm about to find out. In the years since this has occurred, this has weighed so heavily on my heart. You all know that I have always tried to spread positivity and kindness and just give you all a glimpse into my amazing, humble life. My core beliefs have made this whole ordeal so much harder. You know personally. I don't know what that means. Before I was blackmailed, the shame I carried was punishment enough. So this is starting to feel like some Logan Paul level apology, right? Like, I'm sorry that I got caught, not I'm sorry that I did it. I'm extremely aware that what I did was wrong, but part of me actually believes this is all meant to happen so I could become a better person. The only benefit that came from everything was the growth I underwent. You may recall that 50% of the profits from my last merch line was donated to charity, and I don't think I would have done something so good if not for my own inner conflict. I had to prove to myself I was a good person, and the Lindsay incident was a one-off situation. But, I am not the judge of that. You guys are. So I still don't get a clear... Okay, so the author has a merch line. Is this like a Mary-Kate and Ashley kind of deal? I don't know. There's still some questions, although the storytelling is fantastic in this, right? I think we can all agree that this is very entertaining. There's a lot of like lingering questions that need to be answered. And I'm really hoping this last paragraph does it, because if not, or these last few paragraphs, if not, I'm going to be kind of wondering, WTF is going on. Everything I've received in my life is because you guys, and before I had voice and a platform, I still dealt with the shame from all of this. I actually struggled pretty hard. My anxiety skyrocketed, and some days I was unable to even get out of bed. Right before I hit my first 1,000 followers, I was in a bad place. I was getting brand deals and sponsorships, but I was emotionally scarred. I really do believe the inner discomfort I went through is the worst punishment of all. I would be physically sick to the point of almost throwing up after every meal. I'd make excuses to stay in so I could sleep all day, and I'd cry on my back while overlooking the lake. The increasing money and fame did nothing to heal me from this whole ordeal. It took a number of yoga retreats, detoxifying smoothies, AO, and therapy appointments to accept and move on from what I had done. Shame is such a drag, it actually gives you wrinkles. So I encourage anyone dealing with these feelings to work on themselves the way I did. I hope I can at least be a role model of self-healing. I don't... Hold up. We're going to Tobey Maguire this. This is kind of something that feels like it should have been at the start of the paper. Like, we've already gotten to the point where this whole paragraph right here is like, hey, I got caught. I'm sorry. I'm apologizing to my fans, right? This whole paragraph is, I had anxiety prior to this. Take it after me. You can get better, so on and so forth. But this doesn't actually talk about the incident that happened that much, more or less like what happened prior and the shame that was built up to it. I feel like from an organizational standpoint, this should be closer to the top of the paper, because to me, I'm ready for the conclusion at this point, right? If this feels like an additional detail that wasn't asked for, unless it's justified in some way in the memo. But this is something that I feel like would get people interested in the actual thing that you're trying to hide, right? Like, if you put this at the start of the paper and saying, I had really bad anxiety that I covered up because, I was harboring all this guilt, and now I get to finally release it to you. I get to finally break through this anxiety shell and come out and tell you guys what happened. It makes more sense then, but it doesn't make sense to unleash everything and then be like, and also prior to me doing this, I had anxiety. So that's something to consider. I know this is an extremely specific example on this paper, but think about how you're organizing your story, right? This paragraph seems a little off kilt compared to everything else. Okay, last paragraph, and then we'll because we got about 10 more minutes, and so I want to wrap this up. I will no longer let some no-name hold something so personal over me. I will reclaim my power, starting with the statement I'm making to you all right here, right now. So this is what I mean by that paragraph seemed kind of out of focus, right? I'm going to read the last couple of sentences of this paragraph and then go into the last paragraph, and you'll see how it's more seamless to kind of jump into a conclusion after a paragraph like this. You may recall that 50% of the profits from our last merch line was donated to charity, and I don't think I would have done something so good if not for my own inner conflict. I had to prove to myself I was a good person, and the Lindsay incident was a one-off situation. But I'm not the judge of that. You are. I will no longer let some no-name hold something so personal over me, right? I will reclaim my power, starting with the statement I'm making to you all right now. So it seems like it makes more sense to now, since you were setting it up in that paragraph to let the audience judge you, now it's time to let them judge you. My PR team encouraged me to release some cookie cutter apology, but I said, screw that. You guys know me and you know my words. Our bond has always relied on mutual trust and respect, so I hope I can repair any damage that this may have done, and that me penning this will show you that I'm an authentic and genuine. What? Authentic and genuine what? I want to thank you all for the support you've shown me and will continue to show me through this whole process. I have learned from this situation. I will continue to educate myself and grow. Once more, thanks for the support. I'm sending nothing but love and good energy. Thank you all. Remember, everything done in the dark always comes to light. A statement that rings true more today than it ever has. Is that a Dark Knight quote? I don't know. So before I get into the memo, I still don't understand what this person is famous for. This is an amazing paper. But the author's stance in this, the author's fame, is not abundantly clear. There's a lot of different things that the author alludes to about being famous, but I'm not exactly sure. Are they a famous TikToker? Are they an actress? Are they a philanthropist? Are they like an Elon Musk, right? I don't know these things. It's not clear to me. So that one, that's probably my biggest, before I get into the memo, my biggest gripe with this is there's a lack of clarity as far as what the author is famous for. All right, memo page, real quick. First, I want to say I never did this. I mean, I'm not going to actually believe any of you did anything that you write, so you don't have to clarify that. But thank you for this, student number 3. There are some details that are accurate, but I never actually did anything illegal. All right. I'm sure what's her face? What's her name? Is it Katrina? What is her name? Wow, I have to go all the way. Lindsay. I'm sure Lindsay would disagree. I'm sure Lindsay would disagree that you never did anything illegal, but that's between you and Lindsay. The context of this paper is an online apology akin to what is known as a notes app apology on social media. A detail that was actually pointed out by one of my peer editors. The author is based on myself, except she is a very self-absorbed social media influencer. So that's what the author does, so let's think about social media influencers. I cannot think of her name, the Kardashian, not Kim or Khloe, but the young one. Super famous influencer. Her brand is her influence. Her name is her influence, right? So maybe there's some specificity in that end. Throughout the entire thing, my character consciously tried to distance themselves from the event and word it like it was their fault. This is shown in the phrases hurtful but just not harmless. They never actually apologize for what took place, and anything close to an admission of guilt is followed by a justification or the main character victimizing themselves. My favorite example is this sentence. The whole ordeal has been so hard, personally. My audience is obviously their fans, and throughout the essay I say you guys, you all, constantly referring to them like this is a dialogue. So this is actually a good genre convention, is that if this is a notes app apology, right, if that's the context, then talk about how, if this is an apology you're making to a bunch of people, you're using words like you guys and you all to show that this is for an audience of a lot of people. I used the phrase I hope several times in an attempt to garner sympathy from said audience. I wanted this to be the sincerest, insincere statement, so I took on a faux formal tone. I believe I demonstrated that by having my character curse and use contradictions, but I also use words and phrases that sound more intelligent. So this is amazing. Like, the student is specifically pointing out things that they did, but again, point to specific parts, right? Having my character curse and use contradictions, such as in this sentence, but I also use words and phrases that make me sound more intelligent, such as in this sentence, right? I drew a lot of inspiration from famous influencer apologies, so I use buzz terms like speak my truth and this has weighed so heavily on my heart. Perfect. My overall message is that I am the real victim and in this, and I don't deserve the backlash as demonstrated by the sentence. I was just in a bad place, ... I was emotionally scarred. My goal is to come off extremely self-interested and hypocritical, which I think I definitely succeeded in. Good. So I think this is a fairly good memo. I think it should be a little bit more specific when talking about genre conventions that you used. But as you can see, is there a clear sense of author? Yes, that's not necessarily clear in the paper, but the author says that they're a social media influencer. So maybe get more specific into what you mean by that. What do they do? Because that's going to, in turn, determine who your audience is. Okay. Audience is very clear in general to me. So, you don't have to necessarily say my audience would be a bunch of 18-year-old white guys, right? You don't have to get that specific, but the message is clear. You, at multiple occasions, tell me why you do the things you do. So no worries there. The context is extremely clear. And the genre conventions are also fairly clear, though I do want a little bit more specificity. When you say, I used a faux formal tone, point to parts of your paper where you did that. So we got 5 minutes left. Let's hear it. What do you guys think? What do you think that student 3 deserves? Wow, all of y'all are pretty on point. And this is why I do the analytic rubric, because you should be able to feel the pulse of how I'm going to be grading through that rubric. I'm going to show y'all what she got. I think A minus is pretty good. Remember, again, this is a volunteer paper, so it's really a 95. But if we're going to pretend it's not a volunteer paper, let me kind of show you where the points were lost. So MLA is absolutely perfect. There's nothing going wrong there. Grammar, as y'all saw, there were some semicolon problems, some comma issues, and some misspellings. Those things can be cleared up by getting another human being that's not you to read your paper. Trust me. Just get anybody that's not you to read it, and they're going to be able to catch misspellings. Maybe not grammar, but definitely misspellings. When it comes to genre conventions and rhetorical awareness, I took off a couple of points just because the author wasn't super specific about the faux formal tone. But I mean, the awareness of the situation they created was there. It was very, very clear to me. Organization, I did take off a couple of points because of that next to last paragraph that I was talking about, where the author kind of went back in their past and talked about how they dealt with anxiety. It felt like I don't know if y'all felt that way, but to me, as I was reading it, it kind of felt like it was thrown in there to buy some time before the paper ended. Brandon Tinney, what would be the probability of you filming a small breakdown of our papers? Not super high, because it does take a lot of time. But I am meeting all of y'all for conferences, so I'm going to be doing this breakdown for you in real time. So all of y'all will see me break this down. But for your other papers, probably not going to make a video. It's just very time consuming. So 33 out of 35 on that. Organization, I took off points because, again, that second to last paragraph to me, it just didn't feel right. And it felt kind of like we were moving away from the story and going back in the past instead of going into the future. And then development, cohesion, and claims. As y'all saw, there were a couple of times in the first 3 or 4 paragraphs where I was like, okay, this is kind of meandering. It feels like we're talking in circles. We're just trying to buy time. And if you look, this paper is nearly, this is 4 full pages. There is plenty of room for the author to cut, right? It's an opposite problem to have if you only have 2.5 pages, right? And you're kind of meandering. But for this writer, I would say go in and realize that some of the things need to be cut out a little. For the most part, it's there, but I did take off a couple of points. So you landed with an A, a raw A. You remember there's no difference between a 90 and an 100. An A is an A at KSU. But because this is a volunteer paper, it would actually be a 95. So I hope this was somewhat helpful for y'all. I'm going to show y'all a couple of things, and then I'll dismiss class. Remember that your paper is due on Thursday by 5 p.m., not by midnight. So if you click on, let me go to student view. If you click on assignments, you should see right here it says, let me set the record straight. That's where you're going to submit your paper as a Word doc or as a PDF. And this live stream that's being broadcasted right now it takes I think an hour or 2 for it to render, but it'll be on the YouTube channel. So you can go back and look at kind of the comments that I made if you're confused. But also, please reach out to me via email tomorrow or in the day on Thursday. I'm going to try to be around my email as much as possible. I also have a lot going on, but if you feel super lost, don't hesitate to reach out to me and ask me questions. Other than that, I appreciate all of y'all hanging out. Looks like we almost had a full class. And like I said, we'll be doing these for every paper, so I'm glad y'all liked it. Good luck out there writing, and stay safe. No, that doesn't feel right. Good luck out there writing, and try not to go crazy with college, because it's very easy.